Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. See, this right here, this situation is perfect. It's the perfect representation for why it's so impossible to accomplish anything with the highly emotional, totally unhinged left. They've crafted this concept in their mind that the Republican side, the conservative side, is a deeply bigoted, self-centered, hateful boogeyman that cannot be reasoned with. And it's this twisted view and twisted belief that makes them impossible to deal with. They've borderline lost touch with reality, and that's why they keep losing their minds in basic conversation. Is why things have become so incredibly divisive, not because conservatives are terrible bigots that are attacking democracy, but because left-wingers can't have a conversation. Right-wingers are willing to sit at the table and tell you exactly what they believe and how they feel about particular issues and what policies they support, while left-wingers, well, you pretty much know what I'm talking about. And this most recent, very public example with Jon Stewart, who's been losing his mind, going after Republicans over this veterans healthcare bill, essentially proves the point that I'm trying to make here. When two right-wing journalists, Jack Posobiec and the National Pulse's Raheem Kassam, confronted him, or tried to have a discussion with him is probably the better way to describe it, Jon Stewart became absolutely unhinged, and no middle ground was accomplished until he realized that he was being a complete buffoon. But the situation is just perfectly emblematic for why it's so difficult to have a conversation these days, to find middle ground, why the world of politics has become so divisive. It's a very important topic. We've got some interesting stuff to look at today. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here. So let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so take a look at this piece right over here from the National Pulse. Watch Jon Stewart, Jack Posobiec, and Raheem Kassam get into it on Capitol Hill. And essentially what I really want to focus on here is a little bit of the description of events and the way Jon Stewart acted in this interaction. It's a 6-minute video, so I'll just edit it down as best as I can to get straight to the content.
So I go out for a run this morning and my friend Jack Posobiec is up on Capitol Hill. We often hang out there. That's where we work. And he mentioned to me that Jon Stewart, a comedian I guess, was up on the Hill to talk about the PACT Act, something he's been working on for a while. Now, there has been some consternation about the way that Jon has dealt with this issue in the last couple of days at the very least.
Because you're look at them in the face!
Stewart was up there this morning. He was seen hanging out with David Hogg. And, well, I got to tell you, at the very beginning of this, I guess, altercation on the Hill, right outside the Capitol building, Jon Stewart just wantonly lost his temper. Now, he has since admitted to that. I think it takes a very big man to admit to something like that, and ended up shaking Jack Posobiec's hand. As a result of all of it, I want to play you through some of this because I think it's very important to show, especially given the outcome of this now, how we went from a screaming match to an end result of all of these parties agreeing to work together to get this thing done in about 60 odd minutes. Not bad if you ask me. Here, take a look.
You've been on the media lately, you've been running around, you've been calling names, you've been insulting.
Right.
Is that how you get stuff done?
Where do you think I learned it from?
I've got one. You think from your TV show? Of course, you're famous for that.
I learned it from
You
trolls.
were the man of that.
I learned it from right-wing trolls who don't know what
You're
the
a right-wing
fuck
troll
they're
now.
talking about. Because you don't.
You know you could get this
Come
bill
with me.
passed in a minute.
Come with me and
Wait,
talk to the
stop.
veterans. Come here.
We've talked to them already,
I
John.
Come with me.
Why are you running
John.
away?
Come and talk to me
Don't
on
touch
days.
me.
I'm not running away. Come with me.
Don't touch
Come
me.
with
Don't
me.
touch me. Just
Come with me.
Why won't you change this
Come with me.
$400 billion thing?
It's not in there.
So immediately I figured out what was the problem here. I mean, Jon was giving very different information to the people we had already spoken to about this and to the people we spoke to after the altercation with Jon about this. The $400 billion in terms of mandatory spending that is in this bill, somebody explained to me very clearly about why they think it must be in there. But Jon's point at the beginning of this altercation was that there is no such thing, you shouldn't be talking about it, and that Republicans are simply evil. Now, of course, that isn't going to get anywhere, and backing Republican lawmakers into a corner over that isn't going to get this bill passed. It was at this point that I decided that we should go with Jon and talk to some of the people who were there with him and around him to figure out if they were all on the same page. Jon didn't want to do that.
Pretend
You
like
can't
you're
just
in
yell
good
at
faith.
people.
Like I
Don't even
just
pretend
said,
like you're a good
you
faith
can't yell at
person.
people.
You're not.
You're
not a
then
good
let's
faith
start
with you
person.
to talk.
And I don't
Then
need
let's
to talk
start
to
with
people
you.
that
We're coming
lie
with you
about
to
veterans'
talk.
health care.
You just
So
said
why don't you
everyone
tell
else
her?
screaming at
Why don't you tell her that this is bullshit?
Nobody
And
said
for
it's bullshit.
John,
Nobody said
mother
it's bullshit.
thinks
Hey
that
guys,
this
I'm
bill
for
is
the
bullshit.
You want to talk about bad faith? Let's talk about bad faith. At no point in the conversation did Jack nor I refer to the PACT Act as bullshit. At no point did we refer to the $400 billion as bullshit. But John, as soon as we agreed to go over and talk to his friends about all of this in front of his cameras, starts screaming and telling them that we said the whole thing is bullshit.
You're a
Guys,
troll.
I want the bill
You're
back.
not in good faith.
I'm for the bill.
You're not in
I'm
good
for
faith.
So what's the problem? What are
My
you trying to do
question,
here?
my suggestion is
What
to
are you
John.
trying to do here?
What?
Why is John? I'm not even against you guys.
What are you
Then
trying to do
why
here?
the
Then what are you doing?
Just pass the bill. That's
Let's do it. Let's do it, John.
Pass the bill.
Walking away from him every time
John
Jack
isn't negotiating on
asks
the
to
bill.
try and set up a meeting. John walks away.
That's why you don't want to
He doesn't
pass
want to.
I won't
He doesn't
even
want
be
to.
in the room.
And right there is exactly what I mean. Conservatives don't even get to speak within this cultural environment. The idea that conservatives aren't willing to support healthcare reforms for US veterans is an absurd notion. And the narrative that Jon Stewart and all of these Democrats are putting out there is the same one that they always do. Pat Toomey explains in his interview on CNN.
What do you say to those who find it impossible to believe that of all the multi-trillions of dollars in our federal budget, this is where you and Republicans decided to take a stand?
Here's what you need to keep in mind, Jake. First of all, this is the oldest trick in Washington. People take a sympathetic group of Americans, and it could be children with an illness, it could be victims of crime, it could be veterans who've been exposed to toxic chemicals, craft a bill to address their problems, and then sneak in something completely unrelated that they know could never pass on its own, and dare Republicans to do anything about it because they know they'll unleash their allies in the media and maybe a pseudo-celebrity to make up false accusations to try to get us to just swallow what shouldn't be there. That's what's happening here, Jake. Let me be very clear. The Republicans are not opposed to any of the substance of the PACT Act. My honest Democratic colleagues will fully acknowledge that my objection, and if I get my way, I get my change, it will not change by 1 penny any spending on any veterans program. What I'm trying to do is change a government accounting methodology that is designed to allow our Democratic colleagues to go on an unrelated $400 billion spending spree that has nothing to do with veterans and that won't be in the veteran space.
He's claiming that Democrats are trying to sneak in a $400 billion accounting budget gimmick into the bill, and he's already presented an amendment. In a speech on the Senate floor earlier this week, Toomey outlined an amendment proposal to keep the $400 billion fund in the category where it's always been, the discretionary spending category, rather than mandatory. But like every other situation, instead of actually listening to what the conservative has to say and what his view is, we see nothing but a whole bunch of divisive propaganda that Republicans don't care. Republicans are fist bumping on the Senate floor. Republicans are terrible, evil bigots that don't care about veterans. A huge public media intimidation campaign trying to shame them and force them through social ostracization instead of listening to what they have to say. In those clips with Jon Stewart and Jack Posobiec, did Jack Posobiec look like he was arguing in bad faith or approaching Jon Stewart to troll? Or did he explicitly claim that he's actually on the same side and wants to come to an agreement, wants to have a basic discussion, but the leftist side is emotional and unhinged and creates this dynamic where it's literally impossible to even have a discussion. The moment things get emotional, the moment things get personal, the moment one side is resorting to personal attacks and becoming unhinged, the conversation is essentially over. And what we saw right over here is essentially a microcosm of the situation at whole. It's the reason why nothing gets done, because one side is saying, my way or the highway, you're a bigot, you're a terrible person, you're literally Hitler, you must be fully condemned, you're a threat to democracy. And the other side is saying, but I just think we're spending too much money and taxes are a little bit too high. It shouldn't be so difficult to operate and run a business, and government should maybe be reduced a little bit. But the other side doesn't want to listen. The other side wants to bully and get their way through fear-mongering, propaganda, and intimidation. That is the reality of what's going on here. It seems to be the age-old leftist tactic, with Democrats trying to sneak something into a bill that's either fiscally irresponsible or bad policy. They try to sneak it into a bill that they know, if rejected, could be used to emotionally manipulate the American public, and then when Republicans vote no on the bill and ask for an amendment, well, the fear-mongering media propaganda campaign begins. Then they have the audacity to claim that Republicans and Donald Trump are the ones causing all the division. It's bogus, and once again, this situation proves it. Because after Jon Stewart's unhinged meltdown, once he had a moment to think and collect himself, well, what do you think ended up happening?
This is Jack Posobiec. I'm here with Tim Jensen of Grunt Style, and
Hello.
Jon Stewart is also here. Jon Stewart and I have decided to come to agreement. Have we not, John?
Yes, sir.
Our-
I lost my temper a little bit. I felt like I was being trolled, and I realized that the important thing is you just got to get this done for these guys and get them over the finish line to get the health care they need.
We're at 98%. Let's get it over the last 2%.
Please.
Is that fair?
Fair.
You shake on it?
7-5, brother.
Do or die.
And see, this right here is how it should be from the start. Instead of constantly condemning your political opponent, ostracizing and attacking them, maybe you should hear them out. Maybe you, Jon Stewart, should have operated in good faith since the start. Maybe conservatives aren't the terrible, evil, bad faith people that you think they are. Maybe all they need is to be convinced that your policies make sense and that your political party and the legislation that they're promoting or trying to pass is fiscally responsible. Maybe that's what people want. Maybe when Senator Pat Toomey and other Republicans claim that Democrats are trying to pull an accounting trick to create a $400 billion blank check and spend money unaccounted for, maybe that's something that the American people and especially Republican voters want an honest discussion and basic transparency into. Maybe having a discussion and coming to a compromise is the best solution instead of acting like a petulant child that didn't get their chicky nuggies and is real mad. But in all seriousness, even though Jon Stewart was highly emotional and acting ridiculous, in the end, at least he did the right thing. It's a lot more than you can say for your basic leftist. In some cases, people make mistakes and they don't do the right thing initially, but they should be given credit for coming around, for seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and doing the right thing in the end. And I don't think that Jon Stewart is fighting for the wrong cause, but in the end, I think this whole situation can be used as a learning tool, that you will never get what you want by acting like children. It's something the far left activist base needs to learn. Going on the street and yelling in people's faces until you're red like a tomato ready to pop is never going to accomplish what you want it to. Intimidating SCOTUS justices is never going to lead to you accomplishing your political goals. Burning down communities and demonizing entire groups of people is never going to lead to a greater society where people come together. I guess in the end, the conclusion of this video is a basic public service announcement to your average leftoid. Just relax, take a chill pill, take a step back, take a breath, and stop being such an unhinged emotional wreck. Conservatives are decent people that are ready and willing to meet in the middle on a whole bunch of issues, as long as it's done properly, respectfully, and responsibly. You know, kind of like in 2020 when Republicans promoted a police reform bill and put on the table as many amendments as Democrats wanted, and Democrats didn't even come to the table. Of course, because it was in the middle of an election season, and the last thing they wanted was to give Republicans a legislative win on police reform. Get off your high horses. You have a moral superiority complex, and at the end of the day, people are just people, and most people can be reasoned with, as long as you act in good faith and apply basic common sense and reason to your arguments and your stances and your policies. That's basically what I got though. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and maybe subscribe to the channel if you want to. I'm gonna get back to work. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.